What are you doing here? I'm working. What does it look like? This building is closed. You need to leave now. The building isn't closed. I have every right to be here. Ma'am, I'm not going to ask you again. This is private property after hours. Actually, it's my property. I own this building. Sure you do. Let's see some ID. Fine. But when you see my ID, you're going to realize you just made the biggest mistake of your career. Officer Marcus Webb had been with the Charleston Police Department for 6 years when he walked into a situation that would cost him his badge and cost the city $4.8 million. He was 31 years old, experienced enough to understand basic property law, but apparently convinced that black women don't own historic buildings in downtown Charleston. One Thursday evening in October, he responded to a suspicious person call at the old Magnolia County Courthouse and immediately confronted a woman working late in her own building. That woman was Diane Ashford, a 3-year-old commercial real estate developer who'd purchased and renovated the courthouse 3 years earlier, transforming it into luxury office space. What Webb did next, demanding she leave her own property, dismissing her ownership documents, and threatening arrest, would become proof of how assumptions about who can own wealth destroy careers and cost cities millions. Before we get into what happened next, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be told, and your support helps us expose the truth. Let's continue. A black woman in her early 42nd, Diane Ashford, was sitting at a mahogany desk in a second-floor office, reviewing construction invoices and lease agreements. Her car keys sat on the desk next to her laptop. Her property deed and business documents were filed in the cabinet behind her. No trespassing, no crime, no violation, just a business owner working late in her own building. But to Officer Marcus Webb, a cop with 6 years on the force and a history of questioning black people's right to occupy upscale spaces, she looked like someone breaking in. The old Magnolia County Courthouse sits on Meeting Street in the heart of Charleston's historic district. Built in 1872, it's a 3-story Greek Revival building with massive white columns, original heart pine floors, and 14-foot ceilings. For 140 years, it served as the county courthouse until the city built a modern judicial center in 2018. The building sat vacant for 2 years before Diane Ashford purchased it in 2020 for $2.3 million, spent another $3.1 million renovating it, and transformed it into premium office space for law firms, financial advisors, and consulting companies. The building's exterior still looked like a courthouse, complete with the original stone steps and brass fixtures, but inside it was modern luxury, exposed brick, designer lighting, marble bathrooms, and offices that rented for $45 per square foot. It was 9:15 p.m. on a Thursday in late October. The temperature had dropped to the low 60 seconds. The street was quiet. Most businesses closed for the evening. A few restaurants down the block still had customers, but this section of Meeting Street was mostly dark. The courthouse building had lights on in 3 windows, all on the second floor, all in Diane Ashford's private office where she'd been working since 7 p.m., catching up on paperwork. Diane Ashford had been a commercial real estate developer for 18 years. 18 years of identifying undervalued properties, securing financing, managing renovations, and creating spaces that generated income. She'd started small, buying a rundown duplex in North Charleston when she was 25, renovating it herself on weekends, and renting it out. That duplex led to another, then a small apartment building, then a mixed-use development, then larger commercial properties. She'd built a portfolio worth $47 million through careful investments, strategic partnerships, and an ability to see potential where others saw only problems. Ashford had earned every dollar. She graduated from the University of South Carolina with a degree in business administration, then earned her MBA from Duke with a focus on real estate finance. She'd worked for a commercial development firm in Charlotte for 3 years, learning the industry, building relationships with banks and contractors. Then she'd returned to Charleston, her hometown, and started acquiring properties. She'd renovated a historic warehouse in the French Quarter, converting it to retail space. She'd purchased and restored a 1,922nd hotel downtown, transforming it into condominiums. She'd developed 2 mixed-use projects combining residential and commercial space. Every project succeeded. Every investment appreciated. Banks competed to finance her deals. Contractors bid for her projects. At 43 years old, Diane Ashford was exactly where she'd worked to be. She owned 12 properties across Charleston. She employed 8 people in her development company. She sat on the board of the Charleston Chamber of Commerce and the Historic Preservation Society. She lived in a restored 1,842nd single house in the historic district that she'd renovated herself. She drove a Tesla Model S. She had a partner, a medical researcher named Dr. Patricia Moreno, and 2 rescue cats named Equity and Leverage. That Thursday evening, Ashford had been at the Courthouse building since 7 p.m. She'd spent the day at other properties, meeting with contractors and inspecting construction progress. The courthouse was her flagship property, her most visible success, and she made a point of being there regularly. She wore dark jeans, a cream cashmere sweater, and leather ankle boots, professional but comfortable. Her property deed was in a file cabinet in her office, along with insurance documents, lease agreements, and tax records. She kept detailed files on every property she owned. She looked like what she was, a successful business owner working late. She'd harmed no one, violated nothing, disturbed no one. But to someone passing by, someone who couldn't imagine a black woman owning a historic building, her presence late at night looked suspicious. Officer Marcus Webb was 31 years old. He'd been with the Charleston Police Department for 6 years, assigned to the downtown district that covered the historic area and tourist zones. He was considered a solid officer by his supervisors, reliable and thorough. But his record contained something troubling. 8 complaints in 6 years. 8. 5 of them involved questioning black people about their right to be in certain spaces. A black man entering a home in the historic district was stopped and asked to prove he lived there, even though he was carrying groceries and had keys. A black woman sitting in a parked BMW was questioned about whether the car was stolen. A black teenager walking through Colonial Lake Park was detained and searched based on a vague description of someone suspicious. A black couple having dinner on their own porch in a wealthy neighborhood were asked to show proof of residency. A black business owner opening his shop early in the morning was confronted about breaking and entering. Each complaint followed the same pattern. Webb saw a black person in a space associated with wealth or privilege and assumed they didn't belong. Each complaint was investigated and closed without discipline. The department considered them judgment errors, not evidence of bias. Training was recommended. Webb attended. Nothing changed. That Thursday evening, Webb was on patrol in the downtown district when he received a call at 9:08 p.m. An anonymous caller reported seeing lights on at the old courthouse building and a suspicious person moving around inside. The caller said the building should be closed and asked if someone was breaking in. Webb responded immediately. In his mind, this was straightforward. Old government building, late at night, unauthorized person inside. He arrived at 9:13 p.m., parking his patrol car directly in front of the building. He walked up the stone steps and tried the front door. It was unlocked. He pushed it open and entered. The lobby was dark, but he could see light coming from a staircase leading to the second floor. He climbed the stairs, his hand resting near his weapon, his footsteps echoing on the marble steps. At the top, he saw light spilling from an open doorway. He walked toward it. Do you think officers should verify building ownership before confronting people working late? Drop your answer below. Diane Ashford was reviewing a lease renewal contract when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. She looked up and saw a police officer standing in her doorway, hand near his weapon, staring at her. What are you doing here? Ashford set down her pen, her expression more confused than concerned. I'm working. What does it look like? This building is closed. You need to leave now. The building isn't closed. I'm here, and I have every right to be here. Webb stepped into the office, his posture aggressive. Ma'am, I'm not going to ask you again. This is private property after hours. You're trespassing. Ashford felt her stomach tighten. She'd been through this before. Different situations, different officers, but always the same assumption. She didn't belong. Actually, officer, it's my property. I own this building. Webb's expression hardened. Sure you do. Let's see some ID. Fine, but when you see my ID, you're going to realize you just made the biggest mistake of your career. Ashford reached for her purse on the desk. Webb's hand moved to his weapon. She froze. I'm reaching for my wallet. Slowly, she pulled out her driver's license and handed it to Webb. He examined it, comparing the photo to her face. Diane Ashford, Charleston address. He handed it back. That doesn't prove you own this building. Of course it doesn't. The deed proves I own this building. Ashford stood and walked to the filing cabinet behind her desk. Webb tensed. I'm opening a file cabinet. I'm getting documents. She pulled out a folder and removed several papers. The property deed, the title insurance policy, and the most recent tax bill. She spread them on the desk. Property deed, purchased September 2020. Title in my name. Property taxes paid current. All showing Diane Ashford as the owner of 847 Meeting Street, the old Magnolia County Courthouse. Webb barely glanced at them. Those could be fake. I'm going to need you to come down to the station until we verify this. This is where bias becomes impenetrable. Officer Webb had responded to a call about a suspicious person in a closed building. When he arrived, he saw a black woman working in an office. In his mind, that confirmed the call. The ID didn't matter. The property deed didn't matter. The tax documents didn't matter. He'd already decided she was trespassing, and every piece of evidence was dismissed as possibly fake. Officer, I'm not going anywhere. These are legal documents. You can verify them right now. The property records are public. The Charleston County Register of Deeds has everything online. You can check from your phone. Webb's jaw clenched. I don't need to check anything. You're coming with me. On what charge? Trespassing and obstruction. I'm not trespassing. I own this building. And I'm not obstructing. I'm showing you legal proof of ownership. Ashford pulled her phone from her pocket. I'm calling my attorney. Put the phone down. I have the right to call my attorney. Webb stepped closer, his hand moving toward his handcuffs. Put the phone down now, or I'm adding resisting arrest. Should officers be required to verify property records before making arrests for trespassing? Let me know what you think. Ashford knew she had a choice. She could continue asserting her rights and risk this escalating to violence, or she could comply, document everything, and let her attorney handle it. She chose the latter. I'm putting the phone down. I'm complying. But I want you to know that I'm Diane Ashford, owner of Ashford Properties. I own this building and 11 other properties in Charleston. You are making a massive mistake. Webb pulled out his handcuffs. Hands behind your back. You're arresting me? In my own building? Hands behind your back now. Ashford turned slowly, placing her hands behind her back. Webb grabbed her wrists roughly, yanking them together. The handcuffs snapped on tight. Ashford winced. Those are too tight. Webb ignored her. He guided her toward the door, leaving her laptop open on the desk, her documents spread out, her purse on the chair. Wait, my laptop, my purse, the door to my building. Will secure everything. That laptop has confidential business information. You can't just leave it. Webb walked her down the hallway toward the stairs. As they descended, Ashford looked at the walls she'd restored, the floors she'd refinished, the building she'd saved from demolition. She was being arrested in her own property. They reached the front door. A small crowd had gathered outside, people from the restaurants down the block, curious about the police car. Webb walked Ashford to his patrol car, opened the back door, and guided her inside. The handcuffs dug into her wrists. She said nothing. She was building her case mentally. Times, statements, actions, witnesses. Webb got in the driver's seat and pulled away from the courthouse. The drive to the downtown precinct took 6 minutes. Ashford spent it breathing slowly, staying calm, thinking through her next steps. She'd built a real estate empire. She knew how to handle problems, and this problem had just created evidence for a lawsuit. They arrived at the precinct at 9:34 p.m. Webb walked Ashford inside, still handcuffed, past the front desk, where a sergeant looked up with confusion. Webb, what have you got? Trespassing at the old courthouse. Suspect claims she owns the building. The sergeant stood. Claims she owns it? Did you verify? She showed me some documents. Could be fake. Ashford spoke, her voice clear and controlled. Sergeant, my name is Diane Ashford. I own Ashford Properties, a commercial real estate development company. I purchased the old Magnolia County Courthouse in September 2020. I was working late in my office when Officer Webb entered my building and arrested me. I showed him my property deed, my title insurance, and my tax bill. He dismissed them as potentially fake and arrested me anyway. I am not trespassing. I am the legal owner of that property. The sergeant's expression shifted. You own the old courthouse? Yes. I purchased it 3 years ago and converted it to office space. I have 12 tenants currently leasing space in the building. The property records are public. You can verify everything with the Charleston County Register of Deeds. The sergeant turned to Webb. Did you check the property records? She just showed me some papers. Anyone can print. Did you check the public records? The sergeant's voice had an edge now. No. You arrested someone for trespassing without verifying who owns the property? The sergeant sat down at his computer and pulled up the Charleston County Property Records database. He typed in the address 847 Meeting Street. The screen loaded. Property owner, Diane Ashford. Purchase date, the 15th of September 2020. Purchase price, $2,300,000. Current assessed value, $5,800,000. He stared at the screen, then looked at Webb. She owns it. Take those cuffs off her right now. Webb's face went pale. He unlocked the handcuffs. Ashford rubbed her wrists, red marks visible where the metal had pressed into her skin. A lieutenant arrived within minutes, Catherine Morse, a 19-year veteran who'd handled enough officer mistakes to know when something was indefensible. The sergeant briefed her quickly, showing her the property records, explaining what Webb had done. Morse's expression darkened with each sentence. She turned to Ashford. Miss Ashford, on behalf of the Charleston Police Department, I apologize. This is completely unacceptable. You were arrested in your own building. Ashford's voice was measured but firm. Lieutenant, an apology is noted, but it doesn't address what happened. I was racially profiled. I was arrested in my own property despite showing legal documents. I was handcuffed and I was humiliated. I will be filing a formal complaint and I will be pursuing legal action. Morse nodded. You have every right to do so. She turned to Webb. Badge and weapon. Administrative leave effective immediately. Lieutenant, I was responding to a call. You arrested a property owner for working in her own building? You didn't verify ownership? You dismissed legal documents? Give me your badge. Webb unclipped his badge and handed it over along with his service weapon. His hands were shaking. Should officers face termination for arrest based on failure to verify basic facts? Drop your answer. Within 12 hours, the story had spread across Charleston. Not through video this time, but through word of mouth and local news. Diane Ashford was well known in the business community. She sat on boards. She'd won awards for historic preservation. The president of the Chamber of Commerce called her personally to express outrage. The mayor's office issued a statement promising a full investigation. Officer Marcus Webb's career collapsed within weeks. The Charleston Police Department placed him on unpaid administrative leave. An internal investigation reviewed not just this arrest, but Webb's entire 6-year record. What they found was damning. 8 complaints in 6 years, 5 involving Black people questioned about their right to be in certain spaces, all dismissed without meaningful consequence. Training completed but never internalized. A clear pattern of seeing Black people in affluent areas and assuming they didn't belong. Webb released a brief statement through his union representative. I responded to a call about a suspicious person. I followed procedure as I understood it. I regret any misunderstanding. The statement revealed no understanding of what he'd actually done. Civil rights attorneys contacted Ashford within 48 hours. This wasn't just a wrongful arrest. This was an example of how Black wealth is criminalized, how successful Black people are treated as suspects in their own spaces. Ashford filed a lawsuit 4 weeks later. The lawsuit named Officer Marcus Webb, Sergeant Daniel Price for failure to properly supervise an officer with multiple similar complaints, Lieutenant Catherine Morse for systemic failures in addressing pattern behavior, and the city of Charleston. The claims were extensive: unlawful arrest and detention without probable cause, false imprisonment, violation of civil rights under state and federal law, racial profiling and discrimination based on the assumption that Black women cannot own valuable historic properties, trespass by Officer Webb who entered private property without permission or warrant, excessive force through unnecessarily tight handcuffs, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and failure to train officers to verify property ownership before making trespassing arrests. The lawsuit included Webb's complete disciplinary record, 8 complaints in 6 years, 5 involving assumptions about black people in wealthy spaces, all closed without discipline. The pattern documented across multiple incidents, multiple complainants, multiple years, all ignored. The City of Charleston's legal team reviewed the evidence. The property records were public and clear. The arrest happened in Ashford's own building. She'd shown legal documents. Webb had refused to verify. The facts were indefensible. The city's attorneys recommended immediate settlement. 16 months after the arrest, the city settled for $4.8 million. The settlement included requirements that Charleston PD implement mandatory property record verification before any trespassing arrest, establish a 3-complaint threshold for pattern investigation, require bias training for all officers with any racial profiling complaints, and terminate Officer Marcus Webb. Webb was officially terminated 13 weeks after the arrest. The termination letter was unambiguous. Officer Webb arrested a property owner for working in her own building, refused to verify public property records, and demonstrated a pattern of racially biased assumptions about black people in affluent spaces. Despite 8 complaints over 6 years, 5 involving similar racial profiling, Officer Webb showed no improvement in judgment or reduction in biased policing. His employment is terminated effective immediately. Webb's name was entered into the National Decertification Index. His law enforcement career ended at 31 years old. He released no further statements. He did not appeal the termination. Should property owners have the right to sue officers personally for trespassing when wrongfully arrested in their own buildings? Let me know in the comments. Diane Ashford testified before the Charleston City Council 8 months after the incident. She'd been invited to speak about police accountability and economic development. Her testimony was precise, powerful, and deeply personal. I'm a commercial real estate developer. I've been building businesses in Charleston for 18 years. I own 12 properties worth $47 million. I employ 8 people directly and another 50 through my contractors and tenants. I pay over $400,000 in property taxes annually. I sit on the Chamber of Commerce board and the Historic Preservation Society. She paused, looking at each council member. And none of that mattered when Officer Webb saw me working late in my own building. He saw a black woman in a historic property and decided I must be trespassing. I showed him my driver's license. Not enough. I showed him my property deed. He said it could be fake. I showed him my title insurance and tax bill. He dismissed them. I told him the records were public and he could verify everything from his phone. He refused. Instead, he arrested me. Her voice grew stronger. Officer Webb had 8 complaints in 6 years. 8. 5 involving black people in spaces he didn't think we belonged. And every single time, the department closed the complaint with maybe some training and moved on. No one connected the dots. No one saw the pattern. No one asked why the same officer kept questioning whether black people had the right to exist in affluent spaces. She leaned forward. I'm grateful for the settlement, but money doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't undo the trauma of being handcuffed in a building I purchased, renovated, and filled with tenants. It doesn't restore the dignity of being treated like a criminal in front of my own property. And it doesn't answer the question that matters most. If this can happen to someone like me, with resources and visibility and documentation, what happens to everyone else? The room was absolutely silent. Should departments maintain public databases of officers with 3 or more racial profiling complaints? Drop your answer. This wasn't just about one arrest. This was about a system that kept Marcus Webb on patrol despite 8 complaints showing a clear pattern. His supervisors saw the complaints. They read them. They closed them. They sent Webb to training. And then they put him back on the street where he continued doing exactly what he'd always done, seeing black people in nice spaces and assuming they were criminals. Webb's record told a story the Charleston Police Department refused to read. 8 complaints over 6 years, 5 of them following an identical pattern. Black person in affluent space. Webb questions their right to be there. Complaint filed, investigation closed. Webb continues working. The pattern screamed bias. The documentation demanded action. But the department treated each incident as isolated, never connecting them, never acknowledging what they collectively revealed. The system failed at every level. The officers who took the initial complaints failed to flag the pattern. The sergeants who investigated failed to recommend meaningful consequences. The lieutenants who reviewed the files failed to remove an officer demonstrating clear bias. The training department failed to create programs that actually changed behavior. And the command staff failed to prioritize community safety over protecting a problem officer. Marcus Webb's career is over. That's justice. The city paid $4.8 million. That's accountability. Charleston PD changed its policies. That's reform. But none of that changes what happened to Diane Ashford. None of that erases the night she was arrested in her own building. None of that restores what was taken from her. The sense of safety in her own property, the dignity of being treated as the successful business owner she is. The real question is, what changes now? Do departments finally track patterns after 3 complaints instead of ignoring them through 8? Do officers finally learn that Black people can own historic buildings, drive nice cars, live in expensive neighborhoods, and work late without being criminals? Do we finally acknowledge that the presence of Black people in spaces associated with wealth is not suspicious, it's progress? Because if we don't fix the systems that ignored 8 complaints about Marcus Webb, if we don't address the assumptions that taught him Black women can't own courthouses, then we're just waiting for the next officer, the next business owner, the next arrest, the next lawsuit. Comment if you believe this should be law. Officers who make trespassing arrests without verifying property ownership through public records face automatic termination and civil liability. And if you think these stories need to be told, if you believe change happens when we refuse to stay silent, then hit that subscribe button right now. We're going to keep exposing officers who criminalize Black success. We're going to keep demanding departments fire cops after 3 complaints, not 8. We're going to keep fighting for the property owners, the business builders, the people who earn their success and deserve to enjoy it without being treated like criminals. This isn't just about one officer or one building. It's about all of us and whether we're willing to accept a world where Black wealth is automatically suspicious.